when police found a young woman's body so disfigured by acid that her face was unrecognizable. The only clue to her identity was a pair of khaki pants. What they discovered next would expose a crime so calculated, so brutal, that it would forever change how we think about jealousy, betrayal, and the deadly lengths someone will go to reclaim what they believe is rightfully theirs. Welcome back to Once Upon a Time, where beneath the surface of every lie lies the truth. I'm bringing you a case that will shake you to your core. This isn't just another crime story. This is a deep dive into the darkest corners of human obsession, where love turns to possession and possession turns to murder. But before we dive into this nightmare, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because the story I'm about to tell you has twists and turns that will leave you questioning everything you think you know about the people around you. And if you're already part of our community, thank you for being here. Your support helps us tell these important stories that remind us why justice matters. It was April 14, 2004, in the bustling metropolis of Atlanta, Georgia, a city where dreams are made and, as we'll discover, where nightmares can come true. 25-year-old Lena Morrison was living what seemed like the perfect fairy tale life that so many of us dream about. Picture this. Lena had recently graduated with honors from Georgia State University with a degree in biology. She was brilliant, driven, and had her entire future mapped out ahead of her. But unlike many college graduates struggling to find their place in the world, Lena had found something even more valuable than career success. She had found love. For 3 beautiful years, she had been building a life with Carter Williams, a 28-year-old marketing executive who worked for one of Atlanta's most prestigious advertising firms. Carter wasn't just successful. He was the kind of man who opened doors for strangers, remember birthdays, and had already started a college fund for their son before the boy could even walk. Their son, little Benjamin, was 19 months old and the absolute light of their lives. Anyone who saw Carter with Benjamin could tell he was meant to be a father. He would spend hours on the floor building block towers just to watch his son knock them down with delighted giggles. Lena would often joke that she had to compete with a toddler for Carter's attention, but the way Carter looked at her, like she was his entire world, told a different story. The couple lived in a cozy 2-bedroom apartment in Virginia Highland, one of Atlanta's most charming neighborhoods. Their place was filled with family photos, Benjamin's artwork from daycare, and wedding magazines that Lena would flip through when Carter wasn't looking. Though they weren't officially engaged yet, Carter had already introduced Lena to his entire extended family, and just 2 weeks before our story begins, he had asked Lena's father for permission to marry his daughter. Lena was completing her community service program, a requirement for a scholarship she had received during college. Every Thursday, she would bundle up little Benjamin, drop him at daycare, and head to the community center where she helped teach basic computer skills to adults who were trying to re-enter the workforce. It was volunteer work, but Lena approached it with the same dedication she brought to everything else in her life. To everyone who knew them, Carter's colleagues, Lena's family, their neighbors, they were the golden couple. They were the pair that made other people believe in true love. Carter's sister, Maria, would later tell investigators that she had never seen her brother happier than he was with Lena and Benjamin. But perfection, as we're about to discover, can be a dangerous illusion. Because while Lena and Carter were building their dream life together, completely consumed by their love and their beautiful son, someone else was watching them. Someone who believed that the life Lena was living should have been hers. Someone whose jealousy had been festering for months, growing into something dark and twisted and deadly. What do you think drives someone to that level of obsession? Have you ever encountered jealousy that felt dangerous? Let me know in the comments, because this psychological aspect is crucial to understanding what happened next.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
Thursday morning, April 14th, started like any other. Carter kissed Lena goodbye at 7:30 a.m., the same tender kiss he gave her every morning. He helped her get Benjamin ready, even though he was already running late for an important client presentation. That's the kind of man Carter was. His family always came first. Lena was radiant that morning. She had just found out that her community service supervisor was considering recommending her for a paid position with the program. Carter later told police that she was practically glowing with excitement about their future. She had even mentioned wanting to cook Carter's favorite dinner that night to celebrate. "I love you," she called out as Carter headed to his car. "I love you too," he called back. "See you tonight." Neither of them knew those would be the last words they'd ever say to each other. Lena dropped Benjamin at Little Angel's daycare at 8:15 a.m. The daycare workers remembered her being in an exceptionally good mood, playing with Benjamin for an extra few minutes before leaving. She told them she might be a little late picking him up because she had some errands to run after her community service. At the community center, Lena worked with her usual group of students. Jackson Mills, her program coordinator and friend, noticed she seemed distracted around lunchtime, checking her phone more frequently than usual. When he asked about it, Lena smiled mysteriously and said she might have a surprise waiting for her later. This is where our story takes its first dark turn. Around 2 p.m., Lena received a phone call that would seal her fate. The caller claimed to be Anita Williams, Carter's sister, who supposedly lived overseas and was visiting Atlanta for the first time in years. But here's the thing that makes this even more chilling. Carter didn't have a sister named Anita. He had never mentioned anyone by that name. So, how did Lena believe this lie so completely? The answer reveals just how sophisticated and calculated this deception truly was. For weeks, someone had been carefully building a relationship with Lena through text messages. They knew details about Carter's family, his work, even personal jokes between Carter and Lena. They knew Benjamin's favorite toys, where the couple liked to eat dinner, and even the names of Carter's real family members. This wasn't some random catfishing attempt. This was a methodical, long-term psychological manipulation designed to gain Lena's complete trust. The person posing as Anita had been texting with Lena for nearly 3 weeks, gradually building a friendship. She claimed to work for an international nonprofit, always traveling, which explained why they had never met in person. She asked for photos of her nephew Benjamin, sent sweet messages about how excited she was to finally meet Lena, and even offered relationship advice about dealing with Carter's tendency to work too much. Lena, being the trusting and loving person she was, had embraced this connection. She was excited to finally meet one of Carter's family members and had even bought a small gift for Anita, a photo album filled with pictures of Benjamin. That afternoon phone call was the culmination of weeks of grooming. Anita explained that she had bought Lena a brand new iPhone as a surprise, a thank you gift for taking such good care of Carter and Benjamin. Lena's current phone had been acting up lately, and she had mentioned this to Anita in one of their text conversations. "I'm staying at a hotel downtown, but I'm having the phone delivered to a business address because hotel deliveries are unreliable," the voice explained sweetly. "Can you meet me there around 4 p.m.? I'm so excited to finally meet you in person." Lena was thrilled. Not only was she getting a new phone, but she was finally going to meet Carter's mysterious sister. She told Jackson she was leaving early and even asked if he wanted to come meet Anita too. Thank God he had other plans. At 3:45 p.m., Lena left the community center with a spring in her step. Jackson watched her walk to her car, talking animatedly on her phone. He assumed she was talking to Carter, maybe telling him about the surprise she was about to receive. But Lena wasn't talking to Carter. She was talking to her killer, who was guiding her step by step to an abandoned building where a nightmare was waiting. When evening came and Lena hadn't returned home, Carter's initial concern quickly turned to panic. By 7 p.m., when she hadn't picked up Benjamin from daycare, Carter knew something was terribly wrong. Lena would never, ever leave Benjamin somewhere without calling. Carter immediately called Lena's mother, then her best friend, then Jackson. "Yeah, she left around 4 to meet your sister," Jackson said casually. She seemed really excited about it. "What sister?" Carter asked, his blood running cold. That's when they both knew. Carter doesn't have a sister named Anita. He doesn't have any sisters who travel internationally. He doesn't have any sisters who would buy expensive gifts for his girlfriend. Someone had been playing a very dangerous game, and Lena had walked right into their trap. The next 12 hours were every parent's worst nightmare. Carter spent the night driving through Atlanta, checking hospitals, calling police, posting on social media, anything to find the woman he loved and bring her home safely. Meanwhile, little Benjamin spent his first night away from both his parents at the daycare center because nobody knew what else to do. Carter filed a missing person report at 6 a.m. on April 15th, but the police response was frustratingly slow. Lena was an adult, she hadn't been missing long, and there was no immediate evidence of foul play. The detective assigned to the case, Rebecca Smith, was sympathetic but realistic about the possibilities. "In cases like this," Detective Smith later explained, "we have to consider that sometimes people leave voluntarily. Maybe there were relationship problems, maybe there was postpartum depression, maybe there were financial issues we didn't know about. We have to investigate all possibilities." But Carter knew better. Lena would never abandon Benjamin. She would never disappear without telling someone where she was going. Something terrible had happened, and with each passing hour, Carter's hope was turning to dread. Then came the phone call that changed everything.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
At 8:30 a.m. on April 15th, Carter's sister Maria received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was female, calm, and chillingly matter-of-fact. "You need to go to St. Mary's Cathedral on Peachtree Street," the voice said. "Your nephew is there. He's safe, but he's alone." What? Who is this? Where's Lena? But the line was already dead. Maria immediately called Carter, who was already in his car before she finished explaining. They arrived at St. Mary's Cathedral to find little Benjamin sitting alone in the front pew, still wearing the same clothes from daycare the day before. He was scared, confused, and crying for his mama, but physically unharmed. The sight of his son, abandoned like a piece of unwanted baggage, broke something fundamental inside Carter. This wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. Someone had deliberately taken Lena and discarded her child like trash. Someone had looked into the innocent eyes of a 19-month-old boy and left him alone in a church, traumatized and calling for his mother. Who could do such a thing? What kind of person separates a mother from her baby and then abandons that baby in a public place? The cruelty was beyond comprehension. Father Miguel Santos, the priest who found Benjamin that morning, later told reporters that in his 30 years of ministry, he had never encountered anything so heartless. That little boy kept saying, "Mama, Mama," and looking toward the door, expecting her to walk in any moment, Father Santos said. It was heartbreaking. The cathedral's security cameras had captured footage of a woman in sunglasses and a baseball cap dropping Benjamin off around 6 a.m. and driving away in a white sedan, but the image quality was too poor to make a positive identification. With Benjamin safe but Lena still missing, the investigation kicked into high gear. Detective Smith assembled a team of 5 investigators, and Carter's family hired a private investigator to run parallel searches. Social media campaigns exploded across Atlanta, #FindLena hashtags, missing person flyers, and desperate pleas from family members for anyone with information to come forward. The local news picked up the story, and suddenly Lena's disappearance was the lead story on every evening broadcast. Channel 5's crime reporter Jack Campbell called it one of the most mysterious disappearances in Atlanta's recent memory because of the elaborate deception involved. Carter appeared on every news show that would have him, holding Benjamin in his lap, begging for information about Lena's whereabouts. The interviews were painful to watch, a young father trying to hold himself together while his world fell apart. "She's the love of my life," Carter said in one particularly heartbreaking interview. "She's the best mother Benjamin could ask for. Someone out there knows what happened to her. Please, if you know anything at all, help us bring her home." But as the days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. Police had no leads, no suspects, and no idea why someone would target Lena Morrison. She had no enemies, no debts, no dangerous connections. She was, by all accounts, exactly what she appeared to be, a loving mother and girlfriend who volunteered her time to help others. The community rallied around Carter and Benjamin in ways that restored faith in humanity. Neighbors brought meals, co-workers covered Carter's responsibilities at work, and strangers donated money to the reward fund that eventually reached $50,000. But money and good intentions couldn't bring Lena home. For 2 agonizing weeks, the family searched everywhere. They organized volunteer search parties that combed through parks, abandoned buildings, and wooded areas around Atlanta. They contacted every hotel, asking if anyone matching Lena's description had checked in. They reviewed hundreds of hours of security camera footage from businesses along Lena's last known route. Nothing. It was as if Lena Morrison had simply vanished from the face of the earth, leaving behind only a traumatized child and a family desperate for answers. What would you do if someone you loved just disappeared like this? How do you keep hope alive when every lead turns into a dead end? The psychological toll on Carter and his family was unimaginable. Then came April 27, 2004, a date that would be burned into the memory of everyone involved in this case forever. Construction workers Noah Olivier and Mike Patterson were working on a new housing development in a remote area about 30 miles southeast of Atlanta. The area was mostly undeveloped land, scattered with old industrial buildings and abandoned lots, the kind of place where secrets could be buried and forgotten. Around 10 a.m., Olivier noticed a strong chemical smell coming from behind one of the abandoned warehouses. At first, they assumed it was leftover industrial waste from whatever company had previously occupied the building. But as they got closer, the smell became overwhelming, acrid, burning, unlike anything they had encountered before. What they found next would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Behind the warehouse, partially hidden under a pile of construction debris and old tarps, was the body of a young woman. But this wasn't just any murder victim. This was something far more sinister and disturbing. The body had been doused with industrial acid, likely sulfuric acid based on the chemical burns and the continuing reaction with the victim's clothing and tissue. The face was completely unrecognizable, the hair had been dissolved away, and much of the skin had been eaten away by the corrosive chemicals. Olivier immediately called 911, but he was so shaken by what he had seen that the dispatcher had trouble understanding him. When the first responders arrived, even veteran paramedics and police officers were visibly disturbed by the scene. Detective Rebecca Smith arrived 20 minutes later and immediately knew this was connected to Lena Morrison's disappearance. The timing was right, the location fit with the theory that Lena had been taken outside the city, and most importantly, there was one crucial piece of evidence that acid couldn't destroy. The victim was wearing khaki pants, the same type of pants required for Lena's community service program. But it wasn't just the style of pants that confirmed the identification. Sewn into the waistband was a small tag with Lena's initials, LM, that her mother had added to all of Lena's work clothes. The medical examiner, Dr. Sarah Thompson, had performed thousands of autopsies in her career, but she later described this case as one of the most disturbing she had ever encountered. The level of violence and the deliberate attempt to destroy the victim's identity showed a level of hatred that was almost incomprehensible, Dr. Thompson explained. This wasn't a crime of passion or a robbery gone wrong. Someone wanted to completely erase this young woman's existence. The preliminary examination revealed that Lena had died from blunt force trauma to the head before the acid was applied. At least she hadn't suffered through the acid attack while she was still alive, a small mercy in an otherwise horrific situation. But the acid hadn't been applied randomly. The concentration of burns around Lena's face and hands suggested someone had specifically targeted the areas that would make identification most difficult. This was calculated, methodical destruction designed to buy the killer time and obscure evidence. The crime scene team spent 3 days processing the area around the warehouse. They found tire tracks from at least 2 different vehicles, cigarette butts, and most importantly, a small piece of fabric that had been torn from the perpetrator's clothing during the body disposal. The fabric was sent for DNA analysis, but more immediately useful were the tire tracks. The pattern and size indicated a mid-sized sedan, probably white or light-colored based on paint chips found nearby. When Detective Smith called Carter to inform him that they had found a body matching Lena's description, the phone call lasted less than 2 minutes. Carter couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't process the information he was receiving. "We'll need you to come in for formal identification," Detective Smith said gently. "I know this is impossible to hear, but we need to be certain." Because of the condition of the body, traditional visual identification was impossible. Instead, Carter had to identify Lena through her clothing, jewelry, and a small scar on her ankle from a childhood accident. It was a process that no one should ever have to endure. Benjamin, now a month without his mother, was too young to understand what was happening, but he could sense the grief surrounding him. Carter's family took turns caring for the little boy, while Carter tried to process the fact that the woman he loved, the woman he had planned to marry, had been murdered in the most brutal way imaginable. The funeral was held on May 3, 2004, and was attended by over 300 people, co-workers, classmates, neighbors, and strangers who had been following Lena's story in the news. The closed casket was covered with white roses, Lena's favorite flower, and photos of her smiling face surrounded the altar. Carter delivered a eulogy that left no dry eye in the church. He spoke about Lena's dreams, her love for Benjamin, and her dedication to helping others. But he also made a promise that would drive the investigation forward. "Whoever did this to Lena," Carter said, his voice breaking, "we will find you. Lena deserves justice, and Benjamin deserves to know that his mother's killer was caught." But finding the killer would prove to be more complex than anyone imagined, because the person responsible for Lena's death wasn't a stranger or a random criminal. It was someone who had been hiding in plain sight, someone whose jealousy and obsession had transformed them into a monster. Detective Rebecca Smith had been working homicide cases for nearly 2 decades, but the Lena Morrison murder presented unique challenges that kept her awake at night. This wasn't a typical domestic violence case, a robbery gone wrong, or a random act of violence. The elaborate catfishing scheme, the careful disposal of the body, and the calculated abandonment of Benjamin all pointed to someone who knew Lena personally but had managed to remain completely off the police radar. The first breakthrough came from analyzing Lena's phone records. In the weeks before her disappearance, Lena had exchanged over 200 text messages with a number registered to someone named Anita Williams. But when investigators tried to trace that number, they discovered it was a prepaid phone purchased with cash at a convenience store in downtown Atlanta. The store's security cameras showed a woman in sunglasses and a hooded jacket purchasing the phone, but the image quality was too poor for identification. However, the timestamps were crucial. The phone had been purchased on March 23rd, 3 weeks before Lena's disappearance, which confirmed that this had been a long-term plan, not a spontaneous act. Detective Smith's team began the painstaking process of analyzing every text message between Anita and Lena. What emerged was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. The early messages were innocent. "Hi, I'm Carter's sister Anita. He gave me your number. I'm so excited to meet you." But gradually, the conversations became more personal and intimate. Anita asked about Benjamin's development milestones, about Lena's relationship with Carter, about her family background, and her dreams for the future. More disturbingly, Anita demonstrated knowledge that only someone very close to Carter could possess. She knew about Carter's college roommate, his favorite restaurant, even personal jokes that Carter and Lena shared. This suggested that either Carter was involved, which investigators quickly ruled out, or someone with intimate knowledge of Carter's life was orchestrating the deception. The second major breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Jackson Mills, Lena's program coordinator, called Detective Smith 3 weeks after the body was discovered with information that would crack the case wide open. "I've been going through Lena's paperwork from the program," Jackson explained, "and I found something strange. Someone had been asking questions about her schedule, her background, even her relationship status. But it wasn't someone from our program." 3 months before Lena's disappearance, a woman had called the community center claiming to be a program coordinator from another site. She said she was interested in learning about best practices and specifically asked to speak with volunteers who were successfully balancing program participation with family life. The woman, who identified herself as Sarah Johnson from the East Atlanta site, had a long conversation with one of the other coordinators about Lena specifically. She asked about Lena's boyfriend, her child, her family situation, and her schedule. She even asked for Lena's contact information for a potential collaboration opportunity. But when Detective Smith called the East Atlanta site, no one named Sarah Johnson worked there. In fact, no one from that site had called to ask about volunteers. The phone number left by Sarah Johnson was disconnected. This was the smoking gun investigators had been looking for. Someone had been systematically gathering intelligence about Lena months before the actual crime. This wasn't crime of passion. It was a carefully orchestrated campaign of stalking and deception. The third breakthrough came from the forensic analysis of the fabric found at the crime scene. The DNA extracted from a fabric belonged to a woman, and when run through the national database, it came back with a match that stunned everyone involved in the investigation. Felix Muller, a 26-year-old software engineer working for a tech startup in Atlanta's thriving business district. She had no criminal record, no history of violence, and no apparent connection to Lena Morrison whatsoever. But when Detective Smith dug deeper into Felix's background, a disturbing pattern emerged that would reveal the twisted motive behind Lena's murder. Felix had been dating Carter Williams for 7 years, from 2000 to 2007. Wait, that's not right. Let me recalculate those dates. Felix had been dating Carter from 1997 to 2004, a relationship that had ended abruptly just 3 months before Carter met Lena. But it wasn't just any breakup. Carter had ghosted Felix completely. No phone calls, no explanation, no closure. One day, they were planning a future together, and the next day Carter had simply vanished from her life. Friends and coworkers later described Felix as being absolutely devastated by Carter's abandonment. She had taken a week off work, seen a therapist, and spent months trying to understand what had gone wrong. She had convinced herself that Carter would eventually come back, that whatever had caused him to leave was temporary. Then she discovered the truth through social media. Felix had been checking Carter's Facebook page obsessively, hoping for signs that he missed her or wanted to reconcile. Instead, she found photos of Carter with a beautiful young woman and a baby. Her Carter, her future husband, her life, all stolen by someone she had never even met. The betrayal consumed Felix. According to her co-worker and eventual accomplice, Simon Matthews, Felix talked about Carter and Lena constantly. She studied Lena's photos, learned her schedule, discovered where she worked and volunteered. Felix became an expert on Lena's life, while Lena had no idea she existed. Felix was obsessed, Simon later told investigators. She talked about Carter like he was her property, like this other woman had literally stolen what belonged to her. She couldn't accept that Carter had moved on. But obsession alone doesn't lead to murder. Something had pushed Felix over the edge from stalking to violence, and what investigators discovered next revealed the final piece of the puzzle. 2 weeks before Lena's murder, Felix had seen something on Carter's social media that shattered her last hope of reconciliation. Carter had posted a photo of himself and Lena at a jewelry store with the caption, "Big decisions coming soon," followed by a ring emoji. Carter was going to propose to Lena. Felix's fantasy of winning him back was about to become permanently impossible. That's when Felix Mueller transformed from a heartbroken ex-girlfriend into a cold-blooded killer. On May 15, 2004, exactly 1 month after Lena Morrison's body was discovered, Detective Rebecca Smith and a team of 6 officers arrived at Felix Mueller's apartment in Midtown Atlanta with a warrant for her arrest. What they found inside the apartment was a shrine to obsession that would make your blood run cold. The walls of Felix's bedroom were covered with printed photos of Carter and Lena, pictures she had screenshot from social media, blown up, and arranged like a twisted investigation board. Red string connected various photos, and handwritten notes covered every available surface. Felix had mapped out Lena's entire routine, what time she dropped Benjamin at daycare, which route she took to the community center where she bought groceries, even which coffee shop she frequented on weekends. She had been stalking Lena for months, learning her victim's life in minute detail. But most disturbing of all was a notebook filled with fantasy scenarios where Carter realized he had made a mistake with Lena and came back to Felix. Page after page of delusional romantic reunions, wedding plans, and family scenarios where Felix had replaced Lena as the mother of Carter's child. When Detective Smith found Felix in her living room, she was surprisingly calm. She didn't seem shocked by the police presence or confused about why they were there. She simply looked up from her laptop and said, "I've been expecting you." Felix waived her right to an attorney, a decision that would prove crucial to the prosecution's case. During the interrogation, she confessed to everything with an eerie matter-of-factness that unnerved even experienced detectives. "Carter belonged with me," she explained. "We had 7 years together. 7 years of love, of planning a future, of building something real. Then one day he just disappeared, like none of it mattered. Like I didn't matter." Felix described discovering Carter's relationship with Lena as the worst betrayal imaginable. In her twisted worldview, Carter hadn't fallen in love with someone new. He had been stolen by a manipulative woman who had somehow tricked him into abandoning his real girlfriend. "I tried to be patient," Felix continued. "I thought Carter would realize his mistake and come back to me. But then I saw that jewelry store post, and I knew I was running out of time. If he married her, I would lose him forever." The confession lasted 6 hours and revealed the full scope of Felix's psychological manipulation and planning. She had recruited 2 accomplices, Simon Matthews, her 36-year-old co-worker who had developed romantic feelings for Felix, and Matthias Torres, a 29-year-old man Simon knew from his gym. Felix had lied to both men about her true intentions. She told Simon that she just wanted to scare Lena into breaking up with Carter, and she told Matthias they were planning a simple kidnapping for ransom money. Neither man knew about Felix's ultimate plan to murder Lena. "I never meant for it to happen," Felix claimed, though her confession revealed otherwise. She had purchased the industrial acid 2 weeks before the kidnapping, hardly the action of someone planning a simple scare tactic. On April 14th, Felix had put her plan into motion with military precision. She called Lena as Anita, guided her to the abandoned building, and watched as her accomplices restrained the confused and terrified young mother. But when Simon left around 5 p.m., believing the kidnapping was proceeding as planned, Felix revealed her true intentions. According to Felix's confession, she confronted Lena with the truth about Carter, that he had a real girlfriend who he had loved for 7 years, that Lena was just a temporary distraction, and that Benjamin would be better off without a mother who had stolen another woman's man. Lena, confused and terrified but still trying to protect her son, begged Felix to let her go. She promised not to see Carter again, offered to move away from Atlanta, even suggested that Felix could have visitation rights with Benjamin. But Felix was beyond reason. In her delusional state, she saw Lena as the architect of all her pain, the woman who had destroyed her perfect life with Carter. She wouldn't admit what she had done, Felix told investigators. She kept pretending like she was innocent, like she hadn't ruined everything. I couldn't let her keep living that lie. Felix struck Lena with a metal pipe that had been left by construction workers. The blow killed Lena instantly, a small mercy in this nightmare scenario. But even death wasn't enough for Felix's twisted sense of justice. She poured industrial acid over Lena's body to destroy her identity, to erase the woman who had stolen her life. The most chilling part of Felix's confession was her description of abandoning Benjamin at the cathedral. She felt no remorse about traumatizing an innocent child. In her mind, she was freeing Benjamin from a mother who didn't deserve him. That little boy deserved better than her, Felix said coldly. Now Carter can raise him properly, without her negative influence. When asked if she felt any regret about her actions, Felix's response sent chills through the interrogation room. The only thing I regret is that Carter still doesn't understand that everything I did was for us, for our future together. Even facing life in prison, Felix maintained her delusion that she had been justified in killing Lena. In her mind, she wasn't a murderer, she was a woman fighting for her rightful place in the world. Simon Matthews and Matthias Torres were arrested within 24 hours of Felix's confession. Both men cooperated fully with investigators, providing crucial details about the planning and execution of the kidnapping. Simon, who had genuinely believed he was helping with a harmless scare tactic, was devastated when he learned the truth. "I thought I was helping Felix move on from a bad breakup," he told police. "I never imagined she was capable of murder." Matthias, who had fled to Florida after learning about Lena's death on the news, was captured at a bus station in Jacksonville. He had $3,000 in cash and a fake ID, suggesting he had been planning to disappear permanently. The trials took place over the course of 8 months, from December 2004 to August 2005. Felix's trial was the most highly publicized criminal case in Atlanta that year, drawing national attention and sparking conversations about stalking, obsession, and the dangerous psychology of possessive love. Felix showed no remorse throughout her trial, maintaining that she had been protecting her relationship with Carter. She fired 3 different attorneys, finally representing herself in the penalty phase of the trial. Her final statement to the jury was a rambling, delusional speech about true love and fighting for what belongs to you. She never once acknowledged the pain she had caused Lena's family or the trauma she had inflicted on little Benjamin. On August 15, 2005, Felix Mueller was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Simon Matthews received 25 years for accessory to murder and kidnapping. Matthias Torres was sentenced to 15 years for kidnapping and conspiracy. Carter Williams never attended any of the trials. He moved away from Atlanta with Benjamin shortly after Felix's arrest, seeking to build a new life away from the painful memories. In a statement read by his attorney, Carter said, "No amount of justice can bring Lena back, but I hope her story prevents others from suffering the same fate." Today, Felix Mueller continues to serve her life sentence at Georgia Diagnostic and Classification Prison. According to corrections officers, she has never expressed remorse for her crimes and maintains that she was wronged by both Carter and Lena. This case remains one of the most disturbing examples of how jealousy and obsession can transform an ordinary person into a monster. It serves as a reminder that the people around us may be harboring dark secrets, and that love, when twisted by possessiveness and delusion, can become the most dangerous force of all. What's your biggest takeaway from this case? How has it changed the way you think about jealousy, obsession, and the warning signs we might miss?
Thank you for watching. If this story gripped you, drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.